I kind of had something in mind for my daughters from an educational perspective, and is a little bit biased. And I'll tell you, I relented on this when they became, I think, juniors in high school. But my undergrad is in chemistry, and so I'm
Really?
a chemist by education. I don't know if I'm a chemist by experience because I really didn't do any chemistry after I graduated from Georgia, but I have a chemistry degree. I'm a certified chemist dating back to 1993.
Cool.
And so for years, my viewpoint was my daughters need to be in math or science, particularly science, because there's a lot of benefits to that, analytical, how you align yourself into the workforce. And we can talk that later if you want. But I had this position that they need to be scientists or mathematicians. I also understood that I had young girls, and young girls, if not young Black girls, typically struggle with science and math. It was just back when I did research, decades ago, that was just sort of a natural place where girls struggle with science and math. And so one of the reasons for that I found was a lack of confidence. It wasn't that they didn't have the aptitude to do it, it's that they didn't have the confidence to do it. And the confidence built up to a point where it trumped their aptitude. And therefore they just went into a different direction. It's the old travel the path of least resistance. So they moved away from science and math simply because their confidence or lack of confidence precluded them from doing that. Well, if my mindset is I want to have daughters who do science and math, and the key impediment is confidence, then what do? Affect their confidence. How do I affect their confidence? I decided to do summer math and science programs on my own. I mean, I always loved algebra. I'm obviously a chemist, so I understand science. So when they were in middle school, so before they actually got to high school, so late elementary for my youngest daughter, middle school for my oldest daughter, I think it was about a month, so 4 to 5 weeks, a couple hours, 2 days a week, we would do math and science. And I would teach them algebra, and I would do the whiteboard. I'd give them assignments. They'd have tests. I'd grade them. We talk about it. If their cousins came, so my nephews or nieces happened to come during that time, guess what? They were sitting in the class. They were doing it too. And you ask them now, they'll remember doing it, however long it was. And so therefore I did that so that whenever they took the class, and it could be 1 or 2 or 3 years later, because I was doing stoichiometry, which is a form of chemistry, when they were in middle school, and they weren't taking chemistry until 11th grade. But I was introducing topics and subjects and content that demanded that they make sense of it. I could also see how resilient they were. And then obviously by the end, they overcame it because they had a measure of success and they were introduced to things that they were not going to be introduced to for a couple of years. Well, that investment during that time meant that when they got to 10th grade or 11th grade and they started taking, whether it's algebra or geometry or chemistry, confidence wasn't the issue. Confidence was not the bar that precluded them from investing in math and science. And it's just an example of having an aspiration and then taking actions in order to enable them to achieve the goal that I had. And then I always say at a certain point, you hand the baton off. You hand the baton off where they now have their own personal goals and aspirations, and they're equipped to actually realize that, unbeknownst to them, that you set the conditions for them to be in that position when they were single digits. That's kind of a long